The age of time travel is now. Anyone who's ever picked up a history book realizes this instantly. One of the things that has always perplexed me about this concept of MAGA, Make America Great Again, it assumes that there was some point in the past when things were just a lot better and we need to go back to it. But nobody is willing to change things back to the way they were or do things that were being done back then that would then consequently make America great. Now, I know that sounds like a very convoluted way of saying it, but in this video, we're going to do a little bit of time travel. We're going to go back to the year 1973. And breaking news alert, we did a much more in-depth video over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel where we showed something that really made a lot of people kind of gasp and take a minute to really think about what MAGA means to them. Because some of the things that are in the news right now, some of the most important things, you would be on the wrong side of if it were 1973. How many of you think it would be a super great idea to do the whole Back to the Future things? If we could go back to maybe the late 80s or 90s, and women were women, men were men, and sports cars were sports cars, and people remember that stuff. It's this old adage, absence makes the heart grow fonder, but familiarity breeds contempt. Now, I know people that were over at the Patreon channel saw the thumbnail, and they were just shocked, like, wait, we want to be like the way things were in 1973. Why would 1973 people hate us? Well, wait until you look at the values of people from 1973. I'm sure a lot of folks out there would think, boy, that was a lot simpler time. Boy, things were a lot more Christian in this country. People were a lot more decent and honest and hardworking. Well, guess what? We're going to show the facts, and it's going to blow your mind. Now, real quick, that video is already up over at Patreon. If you want to go over there and you want to go right through it and see the truth, the no holds barred, gloves off truth of 1973. I was alive at the time. I remember quite clearly what things were like in the 1970s. I lived through it. But people forget. People forget how things were and what the values of our country were and how they would be completely at odds with what the perception of those values are today. There's 4 levels over there. This video that we just put up is for the base level. So if you're ready to jump in, pull the trigger on the Patreon channel, this is the best time to do it. Would love to have you over there. Best part is, if you go over there, watch the whole video. If it's not for you, kick the tires. Watch a few more videos maybe. You've got 90 days. Up to 90 days, you can get a full refund. No questions asked. Let's get right to it. This is the only thing I'm going to say about the Super Bowl. In the 1973 Super Bowl, during the halftime entertainment, the song that was sung was "This Land Is Your Land." Remember that one? This land is your land. This land is my land. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about it. And if you go look at the lyrics of what Bad Bunny sang, I think you would say that, boy, Florida Maquis, that makes my argument for me. Boy, 1973 was a lot more genteel time, a lot more classy time, really. Really, well, hold on to your hats. Over at the Patreon channel, we talk about the 24 logical fallacies and 24 cognitive biases. The one we talk about over there, specifically, in this case, is something called declinism. You see, the past is better than it was, nostalgia, and expect the future to just get worse and worse and worse and worse. Here's a news flash for you. Back in 1973, there would have been nothing done to Jeffrey Epstein. Not one thing would have been done. You know why? Because in the vast majority of the states in 1973, the age of consent was around 14 or 15 years old, but the consent laws, the laws for statutory rape, only applied to girls who were of good and chaste moral character. Wait, Florida Maquis, what are you talking about? That's right. You see, for you to say that, hey, this older person over here had inappropriate relationships with this younger girl over there, that girl had to have a reputation of being good and chaste and moral. Because if she was known to sleep around with, boys her age, or walk around in miniskirts, or wearing heavy makeup, or drink or smoke, none of the statutory rape laws applied. Don't think so? Let's read it right from the history. Age of consent at 14. Small adjustments to these laws occurred after 1920. The last two states to raise their age of general consent from under 16 were Georgia and 14. And oh, by the way, we're going to be talking about Georgia here real quick. We talk about this more in depth over at the Patreon channel, but this is a picture from Georgia, 1973. But let's not lose track real quick here. Age of consent laws historically only applied to females. You see, and that's the other thing. It didn't apply. No boy could be raped by an older woman. That didn't exist in 1973. This idea of taking these 23 and 24-year-old female teachers and putting them in prison because they're having sex with 15, 16-year-old boys didn't exist back then. Wasn't even considered in law. Now, it took all the way up to 2015 before age of consent became gender independent. Until the late 20th century, many states had provisions requiring that the teenage girl must be of chaste character in order for any sexual conduct with her to be considered criminal. It was up until 1998 that Mississippi became the last state to remove the chastity provision from its code. Now let that sink in for just a minute. That was the values of the people of 1973. And this picture tells us a lot more. You see, a lot of people look at the prices of gas here and they go, boy, tell you what, even if everything else was equal, Florida Maquis, I would sure love to have those cheaper prices. Yeah. You see, there's a couple things you forget about. For the first half of 1973, or I think maybe this is 1974. 1974, pardon me. The vehicle here is a 73 Chevy Nova. But for the first half of 1974, the minimum wage was $1.60 an hour. That's right, $1.60 an hour. And this Chevy Nova, this 73 Chevy Nova, had about a 20-gallon tank in it and got about, if she drove it nicely and took care of it, about maybe 9-10 miles to the gallon. So let's do some quick math. If it has a 20-gallon tank, the best she could hope for with range would be about 200 miles. Now, right there, people are like, wait a minute. 200 miles, that's right. That's about the best you could really get. If you had the V6, you drove it nice, you kept your foot out of it, which most people didn't. 10, 11 miles to the gallon, maybe. At 50 cents a gallon, roughly. You see, that's all the farther you could get. Now, think of this in a modern context for just a second. How much gasoline do you need in a modern car, a modern equivalent car, to get 200 miles? Well, comparing apples to apples, 200 miles? Probably 7 gallons of gas? Most modern cars these days easily can get 30 miles to the gallon if you keep your foot out of it. Yeah, but Florida Maquis, gas is $3 a gallon. That's only 50 cents. That's true, but minimum wage is $7.25 an hour versus $1.60. So when you do all the math here, she's actually far worse off. This girl here, having worked an 8-hour day for her $1.60 an hour, what's that come out to? Let's see, 8. You know what we're going to do? We'll just go with the last half of 1974 when they raised the minimum wage to $2, just to make it easy. Last half of 1974, they raised the minimum wage to $2 an hour. So she made $16 for her 8-hour day. To fill up her car here, she's going to need $10 to get 200 miles of range. So 10 of her $16 for that day is gone to fill up the tank here. Now, she's not going to fill up a tank every day. I get that. But that's what it takes. Now, let's talk about her 2026 counterpart. Well, her 2026 counterpart, to get 200 miles, of range is going to need 7 gallons of gas. The average for the gallon of gas right now in Georgia is about $2.75 a gallon. So you're talking about $20. But wait a minute. $20 for that 200 miles of range for 7 gallons of gas. You see, right now, 7 gallons of gas equals 20 gallons of gas at that time, as far as range of the vehicle goes, to get 200 miles. Now, are you doing the math and seeing it? You see, at $7.25 an hour, her modern counterpart earns $60 a day and then spends $20 in fuel. So 1/3 of her daily pay at minimum wage fills up her vehicle for 200 miles. Back then, it was 10 of $16, meaning 60%. And this was before the Saudi oil embargo numbers hit, when gas got over $1. So just the idea of going back then because it would be cheaper is off the table by a long shot. Now, here's where it gets better. At this time, there were no drinking and driving laws, no serious ones. I mean, you had to be completely schnockered. I mean, falling down. Just the idea of you, say, having a beer, driving down the road was not illegal. What would you do now if you saw somebody driving down the road with a cold one? Putting down a few Budweisers while they were driving down the road. See, that wasn't legal. That wasn't that wasn't a problem in 1973, 1974. There were no financial responsibility laws, meaning you didn't have to have car insurance at this time. So 14-year-old girls could sleep with whoever they wanted to. There were no statutory rape laws. And if a 14-year-old did have a hard time with some older guy, she needed to go into court and prove that she was a chaste girl for the law to take her seriously. See, this girl here could go right across the street over here to the super thrift, walk in there more than likely. Let's say she looks like she's probably in her 20s, but let's say she was 15 years old. She could very likely at some out-of-the-way podunk place like this go get herself 6-pack, grab a couple of packs of Luckies, head on over to her boyfriend's house. Maybe he's 23, 24 years old. They could sit and put down a 6-pack, smoke cigarettes, have some happy-go roll in the hay fun time. No problem. No car insurance. No DUI laws. This was the values of the people at that time. See this right here? That's all you would need for this girl to never have a chance in court of ever being considered for any kind of statutory rape law. All somebody would have to do is show this picture. Oh, look at this. Look at this girl. She's got her hair all teased up and blonded up, drinking beer with her arm around some dude, and she's wearing a tank top. Nah, she's not of good, chaste, and moral character. Get her out of my courtroom. Look it up. 73. Statutory rape laws typically define the offense as consensual intercourse between an adult and a minor, often 16 or 18. Strict liability without consent. Many of these laws were gender-specific, targeting only male perpetrators and female victims. That was the values of the people in the 1970s. Tracy Lords? Nope. Sorry. Law doesn't apply to you, 15-year-old porn star. And you know what they would do, the people of 1973, looking at you people of 2026, as soon as you stepped out of your time machine? They'd say, what the hell is your problem? You're ogling a 14-year-old in a bikini on TV. You see, they would have had none of this on TV back then. And by the way, yes, Mila Kunis was 14 years old when she auditioned and 15 years old when she was sucking face with a guy who's now in prison for sexual assault. Oh, and let's not forget, ladies, ask grandma about this. Do you know why so many women back then were so happy to stay at home and be moms and do the cooking and do the laundry and mop the floors, take care of the kids. Do you know why? Because a big old bottle of pharmaceutical happy was one phone call away. Hey, honey, can you pick up my prescription on the way home from work? Thank you. Oh, yeah. Back then, there was no such thing as prescription drug abuse. Didn't exist. Not in reality. They handed it out like candy in the 70s. It was Quaaludes and Valium. And then when you got into the late 70s, 80s, it became Percocet, Percodan, Darvon, Darvocet, Lortab, you name it. And now we're 1540 in. People ask, Fort Maki, why did you say this thing going on with Savannah Guthrie? Her mom disappearing has drugs tied to it. Folks, it just smells like it. I've been down this road. I'm going to give you a scenario here at the end, and you tell me what sounds wrong about it. You see, Savannah Guthrie came out and said that her mom, the one that's missing, the 84-year-old woman, was a chronic pain patient, that she lived in pain continually. She wasn't in palliative care. And if you don't know anything about that, what that basically means is a woman who's living in constant pain, especially with a daughter who's very wealthy and very well known, very likely had closets just chock-a-block full of all sorts of different opiate pain medications that would have been given to her. Now, when you get to be about 84 years old, for that age of person, the opioid pain medicine has less and less of an effect. And what really helps people that age, more so than the pain meds, is the sleep meds. So they usually have quite a bit of a surplus of the opioid painkillers because they're at that age, their body is shutting down, and the only thing that fixes anything is uninterrupted sleep. Now, people around people like this, it's easy. It is so easy to get addicted to those pain meds. And here's where you've got to couple that with the details of the story. It is said that the night before, the woman, the older woman, the 84-year-old woman, took an Uber to her daughter's house. But then later that night, when dinner was over, somebody drove her home. Now, she only lived 11 minutes away. Why in the world would she need an Uber? There was nobody in the family that before dinner could have come and gotten her? How drunk would you have had to be at 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon, or how high, or whatever? But then later on at night, after dinner, when you would think that people might have tied one on, might say, oh, nobody here is sober enough to drive you home, Mom. We're going to send an Uber for you. That's not what happened. It was the other way around. Somebody from the family drove her to her house late at night, when you would expect that people might be either too tired or too drunk. You see, here's what I think happened, is that Grandma was supposed to bring a little stash for somebody. Grandma was supposed to have grabbed 15 or 20 of her leftover pain meds for somebody who was at that dinner, and she was decidedly tired of being used that way. And she didn't. And she showed up empty-handed. And there was probably a fight. There was probably a confrontation, because that person, if you know anybody who's ever been a tweaker, they know when they're expecting their fix and the fix doesn't show up, oh boy, that'll motivate them to get their ass in the car and take Mom back home, and then go in with Mom and find the pain meds. And when that doesn't go well, something tragic happens. That's the story. That's the story. You see, on the side, I do a little ride share on the weekends when it's busy, and it's almost always the case that people who were able to drive to a function, whether it's a Super Bowl party or whether it's a dinner, aren't able to drive home. So the Ubers are called for the trip back home. It's almost never the case that somebody gets the Uber there, but then has somebody else drive them home. Almost never. See, to me, that's the smoking gun on this. You see, and it's a tragic thing because a woman this age could have told you a lot more about the 1970s than I could. Because this would probably be, this woman's probably about 10 years older than, let's see. Pretty close to age, actually, of my mom, who, God rest her soul, ended her life when the doctor stopped prescribing her those heavy-duty pain meds and sleeping pills. So I'm just saying, I've had a little bit of experience with this. And there were people around my mom that took advantage of her. And it was a sad thing. So all I'm saying is this, folks. If you really think that you hold the values of the people of 1973 or 1967 or 1952, you really need to look a lot closer. Because back then, they weren't so sensitive about every damn thing. And believe me when I tell you, back then, none of these girls would have they would have never had a day in court. Because none of them were of good taste and moral character, and they were all past the age of consent. They weren't children. They weren't children. You see, they'd look at you going after Epstein like you were a moron. Oh, and if they were, I tell you what, some guy working construction, and he'd worked an 8 or 10 or 11-hour day, and he had a six-pack on ice in the back of the pickup truck, and he cracked a few of them before he drove home. You said a word to that guy, it'd be time to throw hands. It'd be go time. Like hell, anybody was going to tell him he couldn't have a couple beers before he went home. That was the values of the 1970s. Financial responsibility laws, ain't none of the government's goddamn business. It's my car. So if I hit somebody and me and somebody we'll figure it out. I'm not going to be coerced into sending money to some damn insurance company. What would you say about that now? So, I will leave it there. God bless. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.